So what are we looking at? Which part of the house are we looking at right now?
Yeah, so the furthest part here, closest to us at the right, this is the annex as it's described, or we now call it Joan Hart's cottage because of later on. This is where William and Anne, we believe, would have been living with obviously their children and their family right next door to Mum and Dad, to John and Mary, because of course William is 18, no job, no money, no prospects, but there's a child on the way. So they moved in quite quickly, once married, into this little property.
I imagine like for Anne, it would have been quite different compared to Shottery, like moving here.
Absolutely. This is a lot smaller, but you are in the town, so it does show status that you're in a town anyway. You can see there's tiles on the ceiling, on the roof, rather than thatch. Thatch is actually not allowed in town because of the fire risk. So they are quite ahead of their time with that. But obviously in Shottery, it's a big 90-acre estate, basically, a farmstead. She's looking after the younger children. When her mother dies, she becomes, in essence, the mom of the family until the stepmother comes along. But when she moves here, she is obviously a mom in her own right, and she's looking after her family with the support, obviously, of Mary next door.
What would it have looked like out here?
Yeah, so obviously today it's quite a beautiful garden. It would have been more practical though, so a working yard. You would have had your orchards, so your trees, so for your fruit. You would have had vegetables, herbs, all those sorts of things, but also outbuildings for your washing, making bread, brewing beer, ale, that sort of thing. So very practical.
Would they have all slept in the same room then?
They would indeed. Okay. So the ground floor is every room you can think of except for your bedroom, and then upstairs is literally that room. So you'd have a bed and then children with you on the side bed as well, and then on the floor as they grow older.
The bit on the back there,
yeah.
What was that?
So this was an extension that was added in 1601 when William's father dies. He doesn't need to live here. He's got the biggest house in Stratford, so he really doesn't need this anymore. But it's his because he's inherited it. So with the money from the will, he also builds the extension and makes it into a pub, of all things, or a tavern. And it becomes the Maidenhead Tavern, and it's the pub for 270 years. So a lot longer than it was, in fact, the family home of William Shakespeare.